You know what's one of the worst objections you can get? It's the wife or the spouse objection. Because if it's pricing, you can wiggle out around pricing. If it's timing, you can address that. But spouse, you don't even have them on the call. So it's hard. And if you go against that, it might imply that you don't care what they're thinking. Now, I'm not a master of sales, but we do know one. And our clients were asking her, how do you address that without looking like a dick? And she just recorded this awesome video on how do you address this spouse objection from the program. And I thought it was so good, I wanted to share it with you guys. So hope you enjoy it.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to my master class, Everything Spouse Objections. What I am going to do today, hopefully, is destroy your ability to use spouse objections as a reason that you didn't close your deal ever again. It's going to take some practice. You'll get better at it, but stay with me here because it's going to be fantastic. Do this, you'll make all the money and help all people. Why you may be struggling to overcome this objection is because you have an underlying belief about it getting in your way. But number one, you believe that this is a valid objection. Whew. The number of times that I have trained someone and they've come to me and they've said, what do you say to the spouse objection? That's a valid objection. I would want to talk to my spouse, which gets into two. We'll get into that a little bit more. It's like there's this belief system from the closer that someone having to speak with their spouse first is an absolutely valid reason for them not to close. Let's talk about why this is not a valid reason not to close. Let's go ahead and let's shrink this down. And let's get into the details about money mindset for a second here. If someone goes to the store and they are hungry, so let's say that there's someone, they're married, and they go to the store, they're like, I'm hungry, my spouse isn't here, I can't ask my spouse if I can buy myself dinner, but I'm freaking hungry, I have money in the account, I've looked at the account, I know it's in there, and I don't want to starve today, so I'm going to buy myself some food for dinner. So they buy themselves dinner, they go home, they make dinner, maybe they even make dinner for them and their spouse. Their spouse comes home, they're excited because there's food and everybody eats and nobody complains and everything's fine. So the question here is, was it reasonable for that individual to think that they needed to ask their spouse permission to buy dinner? And the answer is probably not. Why? Because there is a mutual understanding between the spouses that they need dinner. Dinner would be a great thing, and maybe this is even an act of service because the spouse is going to be grateful for that meal. Now, when finances get really tight, it is possible that the spouse will be upset that the other spouse bought dinner without permission, but at the end of the day, both spouses will eat, both spouses will be nourished, and they will have the strength that they need to then go into the next day, tomorrow, to figure out tomorrow's problems tomorrow. So when we start to scale this up, we start to tell ourselves that this becomes a more valid objection as it gets bigger, but it actually doesn't. If the service that you're selling is really good, then what will be happening is that this will be a beneficial decision to have been made. Now, let's go into number two. You sympathize with them. So this means that maybe you yourself have a spouse or a partner or someone in your life that if they went out and they spent $2,000 or $20,000 or whatever it is without permission, right away, you're going to freak out and you're going to be like, what were you doing? Why didn't you talk to me about that? This gets into the mutual respect thing. You're like, at least have enough respect to talk to me about it. And so in our head, we get into this cycle and this loop where we're like, man, like I can see where they're coming from though, because I would want my partner to talk to me. And so that can really close our ability to sell because we look at the prospect and we let them sell us on this idea that they're right. They do need to talk to their spouse. And so this is a problem because one, they don't in most situations. And two, even if there is mutual respect, it puts us into the wrong headspace. The headspace that it puts us into is they can't make this decision today. The headspace that we want to keep them in and be in ourselves is how can we find a way where this can be a win? How can they close today and maintain respect for their partner at the same time? And we're going to talk about that. How do we make decisions while maintaining respect for the other partner, but still make a decision today?
I hope you're enjoying Crystal's video. I think she's amazing. The program I got their recording from, we actually help you do three things, which is build a fun business that doesn't require much time and spits off cash. So if you're interested in time, money, and fun, go to program.lexingcash.com, book your call, and we can help you get there. All right, onto the video.
Number three, you believe the spouse objection is somehow harder to overcome than other objections. Point blank, it is not. The spouse objection is exactly like every other objection. The only reason we may personally feel that it's a harder objection to overcome is because of one and two, because we either believe that it's a valid objection or we sympathize with them, and that causes us to become emotional We're allowing the prospect to get us into an emotional place. They're selling us emotionally on this idea. And so it creates an illusion that this is a harder objection, but it is only an illusion. It's a terribly effective illusion in many cases, but it is still nonetheless an illusion. And if you can accept and believe that this is an illusion, you can then handle it like every other objection. If someone tells me, hey, I need to talk to my spouse or partner, I might say, okay, I hear you, no problem. But before you do that, is there anything else about this process that you are not 100% certain will get you the results that you want? Or I might say, okay, what in particular about all of this is it that you would like to talk to your partner about? And if they say the money, then you might say, all right, your partner wasn't here today, so they probably won't have the same thoughts and feelings about it that you do. So what I want to know is, are you 100% certain? Are you 1000% certain that this is what you want to do? Because if not, then there's no reason to believe that you're going to be able to bring your partner to a place where they're also 100% certain. So if you're not 100% certain, it doesn't make sense to talk to your spouse. In fact, that's going to make it worse, because what they're going to do is they're going to emphasize your doubts. So let me ask you, is there anything about this process you're not 100% certain is going to get the results you want? And you circle back exactly like you would any other objection. This is not a harder objection. That is an illusion. You must believe that it is an illusion if you want it to stop being a problem. Number 4, you lack conviction on your own offer, meaning that the result they're going to get isn't worth them having to not fight. We don't want them to fight. They might, but figure things out with their spouse after taking the leap. What do I mean by that? There are times where I close people and the first thing they say is, oh, this is going to be a fight with my spouse, but I know this is the right thing to do. I know that the money is well spent. I know that this is what I've been needing. And so my spouse isn't going to like it, but I'm going to do it because I know that it's right. Now, if you do not have the conviction that you need to take someone's money, knowing that it's going to be a fight with their spouse, but knowing that's going to be worth it, then you need to really think about your own offer. And you need to ask yourself, is what I am doing powerful enough to make the close worth it? When people come to you to buy what you have, they come to you because the problem is big enough that they were not able to solve it without you. Otherwise, they would not be on the call. Meaning there is probably an issue with them and their spouse or partner that is big enough that it is worth them purchasing it today to make that problem go away. And you need to believe that because it's probably true. There are very few situations where they will not be better off buying this. Their spouse will often be very grateful. An example of that is a guy that I closed. This guy still messages me to this day. He still sends me random thank you messages, but his wife did not want him to do this. He got on the call. She knew he was getting on the call, and she told him in advance that whatever it was, he better not buy it because they were already broke. They were really struggling financially. I believe he was working 2 jobs. I think she was working 2 jobs, and they had children. And so it was just a terrible situation. He said they were practically living in poverty, barely scraping by, and that she would kill him. I got him to the point where he needed to close. I pinned him down really good, held him accountable, and he was physically shaking. He started to cry on the call, and he said that if he closed, his wife would kill him, that he was scared of what this would do to their marriage, that it would be so bad. But I had so much conviction because I knew that if he did this 6 months from now, his life would not be the same, and his wife would be grateful. And so he did it, closed him, got it. He did indeed have a fight with his wife later that night. They had a really rough couple of weeks, if I'm being completely honest. It got pretty bad, but he held on. And now his wife is fully retired. She's a stay-at-home mom. All of their kids are in private schools, and all of their kids are in the sport or activity that they want to be in. And he told me that every single time he struggles, he goes back to that first conversation, and he remembers my conviction. And he remembers the belief that I had in him and how I was willing to push him to do something he was afraid to do, which was allow a little bit of tension into his marriage for a little while so that they could ultimately have a better life. And he says it keeps him going. And it's why his wife has never had to go back to work and will never have to go back a day in her life if she doesn't want to. You guys need to have that kind of conviction. If you don't have that, go find it and go get it, because otherwise this will always be a struggle for you. You have to believe that this is worth it. So what do we actually say? What are the literal things that we say when someone says, oh, I need to talk to my spouse? Let's go back to handling it like every other objection. If it was a different objection, what would you say? And believe it or not, that's going to actually solve a lot of your problems. I want you guys to take a moment and I want you to really think about how you handle every other objection and apply it to the spouse objection, and you will close more deals. Right off the bat, you will close more deals. Let's go ahead and let's go down these again, 1 through 4. 1, you believe that this is a valid objection. If you change this belief and someone tries to use the spouse objection, the first thing that comes to your mind is the idea that this is not a valid objection. This is going to change what you say. So initially you might have said, oh, I totally understand. That makes perfect sense. If it were me, I feel the same way. Go ahead and talk to your spouse. But now I'm going to think in my head, oh, this makes a lot of sense. I can see why you would be worried about that. If I were you, initially, back when I first started into this world and on this journey, I might have felt the same way back then, but now I feel differently about it because I've seen what this can do for my life. So let me ask you, and then you insert the question there. We change the frame, we change the energy, we change the belief system, and we change the mentality all in one sentence. We might say, believing in our mind, this is not a valid objection. Okay, I can see why this would be a concern, but I'm wondering, what would your spouse think? What would your spouse say? How do you think your spouse is going to react when you tell her about the program, or him about the program, or whoever about the program? How do you think that your spouse is going to react when you explain the process? Do you feel that you are capable of explaining the process to your spouse? If you are 100% sold on this, do you feel that you will be able to sell your spouse? And then sometimes I'll say things like, you were pretty hard to convince today because you had a lot of questions. Now, I have been doing this for years. I am a high level communicator. I am trained to do this. Now, do you feel, being someone who has not yet been trained to do what I am doing, that you will be able to sell your spouse when I was barely able to sell you? Honestly, do you really think that speaking to your spouse is a good idea? And then hold them accountable for the fact, you guys, that it probably isn't. That selling their spouse is more difficult than maybe they think it is. And listen for their tonality, listen for their language. I don't care whether or not their tonality suggests that this is a scapegoat. You need to immediately assume that this is a scapegoat. Now let's go to number 2. You sympathize with them, because in your mind you're saying, oh gosh, my spouse would also kill me. We have an agreement of mutual respect. We've agreed that anything we spend over this dollar amount, we talk about that we have a threshold. We each have a budget. This goes outside of that budget. This would cause me to have to dip into my wife's account or my wife's portion of the savings. This would cause me to have to swipe my spouse's credit card. Now, we don't want to be having people swiping their spouse's credit card. If it's legally separated, there's a legality thing that we have to do here. But if legally they're unable to pay for it themselves, they need to use a card that doesn't belong to them, we want them to get on the phone, on the call, and yes, I have done this successfully, and yes, you can too, and we want them, while they're on camera with us, to call their spouse and get permission and do things the right way. So let's look at that. How do we do this? How do we get to that point where we're not just sympathizing with them and allowing them to sell us on the idea that there's mutual respect? There is mutual respect, first of all. You can have people close in a way that is respectful. If there's no way to extract the funds without disrespecting a partner, then what we want to do is we want to change the frame in our mind. First of all, if someone is jumping into their fire to save their spouse's life financially, that is not disrespectful. That is respectful in a way that may cause some tension, but it is not disrespectful. Fighting for the well-being of your loved ones is never disrespectful. And I need you guys to believe that, because it's going to help you close more deals. Now, here's the second thing you can do. You can create payment plans or other options for them. This is a last resort. You want the pay in full, but if you must, you can say, you know what? Give me $500 today. Let's say this is a $2,000 offer. We'll keep it low. Give me $500 today or $1,500 today, whatever it is, and we'll do a partial pay. Let's set your next payment date out for a week. I will dive in with you, and we can even speak to your spouse, and you can pay the rest of it in a week. And if your spouse hates everything about this after we've been able to work with you and your spouse for an entire week for the next 7 days, then we can talk about what to do from there. You can refund it or do whatever it is that you have to do. We're not in the business of causing divorces, guys. We're in the business of saving marriages long term by removing the financial obstacle in our own way. That's something that we do whether we realize it or not. Finances are one of the biggest reasons listed for divorce. And I guarantee you it's not because people are buying high ticket programs. It's because people aren't buying high ticket programs and they're not changing their life. So no, you are not increasing someone's chance of getting a divorce. You're decreasing their chance of getting a divorce if you are fulfilling on the service that you promise people. Split it up that way. Allow them to do a 2-pay or a 3-pay. Spread it out. Give them some space. Find a way to put this back into budget for them, but find a way to close them. But you must find a way. You can't just accept the spouse objection. Ask them the question, hey, if we can find a way together on the call today to work this out so that your spouse is not disrespected, but we can still make a decision. Can we do that, please? How about that? Why not do that? Because you guys, this is about the decision. This isn't just about closing and getting money. This is about them having a firm conviction by the time they get off the call. We've already talked about number 4. I think we've beat that one pretty well. You need to understand that what you're doing is worth it. Have to fix your belief system on the spouse objection. Can't sympathize with them. You need to believe that this is not a valid objection. There's always 2 people closing on the call, you and the prospect. When we allow prospects to convince us that the spouse objection is a good reason not to close them today, they're dragging us into an emotional place. They're dragging us into a place where we are now emotionally compromised because we feel like they're going to get mad at us, or we feel like they're going to think that we're disrespectful to them, or they start to give us this energy of, hey, if you keep pushing me, you're a bad person. If you keep pushing me, I'm going to know that you're just trying to get my money. If you keep pushing me, I'm going to know you don't care about the well-being of my spouse. And these are falsehoods. If you are working with me, the chances are you're an amazing person because I don't work with people that aren't amazing. Chances are you have a great product because I do my absolute best not to work with people that do not have good products. And you're actually in this game to help other individuals. In closing, do not let people convince you that if you close them today, your integrity is somehow compromised. Do not allow people to convince you that if you do not fall prey to them selling you on this idea that spouse objections are valid, that you are any less of a person, that you have done anything wrong, because you haven't. The best thing you can do for this person is find a way to work around it, solve these mental obstacles, and get the close.